For the past 14 years, Canadian Forces Base Trenton has been playing host to the annual Royal Canadian Air Cadet Summer Camp. Today, it's a totally different kind of adventure than the one experienced by these young lads' fathers. Gone today is the heavy accent on parade ground drill and routine, and in its place, a more modern attitude to the needs and wants of the modern teenager, and a different approach towards developing in each cadet the finer attributes of good citizenship, sportsmanship, and airmanship. The cadet camp at Canadian Forces Base Trenton, located on the Bay of Quinte, about 60 miles from Kingston, Ontario, attracts about 1,600 boys yearly from cadet squadrons, not only in Ontario, but also from the Western Quebec area, and the Canadian Forces Base in Germany. Just to make sure that no one forgets, new cadets soon find themselves on the parade square, sharpening up rusty skills and learning new ones. Aided by drill instructors, drawn from senior cadet ranks, these young men will soon master the technique of forming a squad from the halt. The amount of drill training a cadet receives while at camp varies according to his seniority. A cadet with more time in receives less instruction than his more junior counterparts, who receive an average of 1 to 2 hours a day. The drill training at camp augments that which the cadet receives at the home squadron level, and yet is sometimes considered more beneficial as the cadet practices what he has learned daily while at camp, rather than simply weekly as he would at his own home unit. Far away from the noise and clatter of the drill square, another group of cadets muddle over a confusing array of compasses, maps, and protractors as they engage in a relatively new form of air cadet training, orienteering. Located far from the cadet campsite and under the guidance of experienced orienteers, the cadet of the 3-week orienteering course learns the finer art of finding his way out of the bush with nothing more than a map and a compass. For our two young friends here, Mike Balavader and Anthony Hart, both of Toronto, the opportunity to get away from the noise of the big city in the summertime is made more pleasurable with the opportunity to get right back to nature and tromp through the bush with nothing but the sky above you and Mother Earth beneath your feet. It's not all a lark, though, as orienteering teaches a youngster a great deal about accuracy and precision, as well as being simply a pleasure sport. And of course, the time limit imposed can pretty near wear a young fellow down. And if it's not hiking through the bush, then it's spending a day on the Trent Canal system with the sports organizers course. Another one of the 3-week courses offered to the athletically minded air cadet. On the second weekend of their course, the rigors of the playing field give way to a little more leisure as our cadets journey down the Trent River under the supervision of the water safety staff. Their journey begins some 15 miles upriver from Trenton and travels through 4 lift locks until they emerge at the mouth of the Trent River on the Bay of Quinte. The sports organizers course differs dramatically from any other course offered at summer camp as it concerns itself exclusively with building a cadet into an athletically sound person. And of course, on a hot summer's day, what better way to cool off than a dip in the drink? Flying. That word's magic to an Air Cadet. Foremost in every young man's mind as he heads towards Trenton for a stint at summer camp is that one chance or two to fly with the Canadian Armed Forces. And each and every cadet that journeys to Trenton is given that chance when two reserve pilots and their single-engine de Havilland Otters on loan from number 400 and 411 Air Reserve Squadrons in Toronto fly down to Trenton for the duration of the summer camp to lend a hand by giving each cadet there a ride of at least a half an hour's duration. It's a chance that triggers in every cadet's mind that yen to learn to fly, to soar high over the fields alone. And for many, that dream becomes a reality with the Flying Scholarship Program that's offered to selected cadets at other Air Cadet centers across the country. But for the time being, a familiarization flight must suffice for Anthony and Mike, as there's a lot more they must accomplish before stepping into that aircraft alone for the first time. As part of their citizenship training, every cadet is given the opportunity to tour one of 3 centers around Ontario. Many visit Ontario Place in Toronto, while others journey to the National Aeronautical Museum and Museum of Science and Technology in Ottawa. And still others, like our friends here, travel to Old Fort Henry in Kingston. Old Fort Henry, with its traditional Old English Guard in their bright red uniforms, cast a spell over their young admirers as they demonstrate how our forefathers planned to stem any planned American attack on Upper Canada in the days before Confederation. And like any other boy, these cadets are full of questions about the operation of the fort, questions which would make the most experienced Fort Henry Guard stop and think for a moment. As part of their tour of Kingston, our friends are also given a chance to take in the sights of the Royal Military College not far from the fort. As budding young airmen, there's always time for an impromptu lesson in aviation as their flight corporal fills them in on the more technical information on an old RCAF jet trainer, now used as a monument on the college grounds. And if the plane doesn't do it for some, then there's always the military hardware, put here to some interestingly different uses by our cadets. Look at their faces. And chances are 10 years from now, some of them will be back here, pacing the drill square as young officer candidates in the Canadian Armed Forces. The job of taking care of the spiritual needs of nearly 2,000 cadets each summer falls to the 6 Protestant and Roman Catholic ministers and priests attached to the camp. As well as church parades each Sunday, the chaplains provide spiritual guidance daily to each cadet in the form of classroom lectures and informal rap sessions, and make themselves available at all times to those young cadets who feel the pinch of being away from home for the first time a little rough. Above all this, the chaplains also run a very popular Padres Pad, where a cadet can put his feet up and relax after a long day. Outside of regular training, the spirit of competition is keenly displayed as individual squadrons compete for recognition during the mid-camp athletic competitions. On these weekends, each unit of cadets is given the opportunity to display their prowess in a number of different challenging track and field competitions. One of the most popular methods of competing is the tug-of-war meet, in which whole squadrons of cadets pit themselves against an equal opponent on the other side of the rope. Cheered on by other squadron members, each team finds itself tested to the limit, trying to bring the rope to their side of the line. As well as the tug of war, each cadet is given the opportunity to compete individually in the track and field competition, and whatever points he accumulates himself goes towards a squadron total. The squadron accumulating the most points in track and field wins the track trophy, while the squadron that accumulates the most points in all the sporting competitions combined receives the Summer Camp Overall Sports Award. Besides the track and field and tug-of-war competitions, cadets also engage in a swimming competition, whose points also count towards the overall sports trophy. Over and above the many track and field events a cadet can involve himself in on a sports weekend, each cadet is heavily involved in a rigorous program of calisthenics, swimming instruction, soccer, baseball, board and ball, football, and volleyball. Over the last few years, the gliding program at Trenton Air Cadet Camp has been changed from one providing ordinary familiarization flying to each cadet at camp to a course that specializes in the training of some 40 cadet glider pilots each summer, with even larger numbers coming in the future. These cadets receive 6 weeks intensive training at the newly formed No. 1 Glider Pilot Training School, located at the Mountain View Airdrome, some 30 miles from Trenton. Their instruction conforms to Ministry of Transport regulations, and upon successful completion of this training, each cadet receives his glider pilot's license, as well as a $100 bonus from the Air Cadet League. It's a happy day when a cadet finally solos, and part of the solo ritual that's developed at Mountain View is a full-dress baptism in a nearby quarry for each new solo pilot. And from these faces, you can tell that the stress of that first flight without the security of an instructor on board with you has given way to relief at the impossible accomplished. And this has been a lucky day for Anthony and Mike, being given the opportunity to see the operation of the school firsthand and experiencing just another star to shoot for on their way through the Air Cadet movement. Cadets coming to Trenton will find themselves in for a big surprise if they think they have large, comfortable barracks waiting for them. The word at Trenton is canvas, and that's what you'll have over your head for the 2, 3, or 6 weeks that you'll spend at camp. No, sir, there's no hotel accommodation here. It's strictly a do-it-yourself, clean-it-yourself setup that everybody eventually gets used to. The cadets are housed 15 to a tent by squadrons for bunking purposes, but during the day are separated into flights, with each member of that flight from a different squadron somewhere in Ontario, Quebec, or Germany. Each boy is responsible for his bunk, and along with the others in his tent, responsible for the tent itself and the grounds. Marked daily by the accommodation staff on such points as how clean the floor is and how clean the grounds are. Each squadron finds itself competing stiffly with each other for the daily tent award, given to the squadron with the highest amount of points total. This type of competition not only serves as a proving ground for each unit at camp, but also helps to keep the tents and grounds clean and tidy. While there are several rules and regulations governing Tent City, it's still a place of refuge where a cadet can while away his free time, and the title City is quite appropriate, as Tent City is indeed a miniature city. By far the most popular facet of Tent City is the Padres Pad, a large recreation area fashioned out of 4 marquee tents joined together. In here, a cadet can engage himself in any number of interesting activities, ranging from simple enjoyment of his favorite records to various other games such as checkers, chess, or the old standby cards. And for Anthony and Mike and their new friend Jake, the Padres Pad is a welcome relief from the rigors of their days. No, we don't only fly. For several years now, a big portion of summer camp training has been the opportunity for almost every cadet to either skipper or crew on one of the camp's 12 sailboats. Instructed by experienced sailors, cadets like Mike can really appreciate what an opportunity this really is to skim across the surface of the bay at the helm of a Georgian 12.5. It's a chance that city boys like Mike very rarely come across, and this, of course, heightens the pleasure. Everyone likes the water, and an Air Cadet is no exception. The Trenton Air Cadet Camp employs several qualified and experienced water safety instructors and lifeguards to look after the scores of cadets that descend on the beaches every day. Through an arrangement with a local provincial park, cadets from Canadian Forces Base Trenton are able to use both beaches at the Consicon Provincial Park, over and above their own indoor pool back at the base. As anyone can see, these happy faces are proof enough that it's easy to have a good time at the beach. But the fun and games give way to a more serious aspect of summer camp: the final parade. At the end of every course at camp, the graduates parade in review before a senior officer of either Air Transport Command or Canadian Forces Base Trenton. These men, who have a real concern for the Royal Canadian Air Cadets, freely give of their time for these morning inspections as they display the accumulation of all the tireless efforts that go into making up the Trenton Air Cadet Camp. Behind the scenes, and unknown to many cadets, a very large organization working months before the first cadet arrives at camp and comprised of many different elements of the armed forces is responsible for everything a cadet sees and does during his stay at Trenton. Facilities, classrooms, supplies, tents, food, transportation, and the like are all provided by the Canadian Armed Forces and the Air Cadet League of Canada. Some 120 officers and call-out corporals are hired by the senior staff officer cadets based in Trenton to man the camp. Months before camp actually begins, teams of regular force and reserve officers sit down to draw up the training syllabus for that summer. And it's a training syllabus that gets better and better every year. Yes, Trenton Air Cadet Camp is getting better and bigger. In the short time allowed in this film, it's been impossible to cover everything. Things like the 6-week band course offered to any cadet of any age who would like to learn a musical instrument. Here again, only top qualified musicians take the helm, leading a green cadet with a desire to learn, all the way from a non-player to an accomplished musician able to play many different pieces along with 40 other cadets just like him. Things like the 3 different NCO courses, a junior leaders course for new cadets, an intermediate leaders course for older boys, and an instructors course for those cadets who are destined to take over cadet teaching positions in their home squadrons. And again here, only top qualified instructors teach these young men. Instructors who have been there. Instructors who have put in many hours of their own on the drill square or have spent several years in the regular force. Concerned people who know. Yes, bigger and better. Those are the watchwords for the Trenton Air Cadet Camp. A team of concerned individuals working together to help develop citizens this country can be proud of, and proud we can be. For the summer camp at Trenton is only one small part of the Royal Canadian Air Cadets, stretching from St. John's to Victoria, and boasting over 30,000 members. The Air Cadets, something worth looking into.